All right, so namaskar, everybody. Welcome.
Namaskar.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. There's going to be a few more people turning up as we go along, I think. At the moment, there are 6 of us, but I'm expecting at least 3 or 4 more to drop in, hopefully. Okay, so I want to share the screen in a minute to give you, so you'll unfortunately miss out on the nice San Francisco picture. You'll see my presentation about this. But let's just make sure we're clear on a couple of practical things. One is, I want you to mute your microphones. So on the right, if you do one thing, click on this thing called, oh yeah, okay, some of you see how to do it. You should be able to mute your microphone down the bottom on the left, actually. On the bottom on the left, there's a little mute button. If you click that, then we won't be able to hear all the background noise, which will be more peaceful for everybody. So most of you have done that. Anjali, can you try?
Yes.
On the bottom, on the left,
Yes.
there's a mute button. Can you click that?
Mute button. I try
Mute.
to look at it.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so click
You want to
that.
hit that one?
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So if you want to ask a question for some reason, first preference is to type it in the chat. So if you want to use the chat, if you go look along the bottom, there's a row of buttons. There's, on the bottom at the left, there's the mute, then there's the video button, then there's some buttons you can't see, I think, that I have. There's a chat button. So if you click on the chat button, then a box will come up on the right, and you can type into that chat box. But you have to type into it, you have to go to the bottom, and there's a little thing that says type message here. And you click your cursor there, and you can type and then return, and it's visible to everybody. So that's great. From Bhairavi, yeah, I can see. So namaskar, everyone. All right. So that's probably the easiest way if you want to ask questions. Oh, namaskar, Kripa Devi. Welcome.
Namaskar.
Yeah, you made it. Good.
Yes.
Last minute joining. That's nice.
Just came home.
I'm happy. Thanks. So can you mute your microphone unless you really need to say something? It's on the bottom left.
Yep.
Thank you. Now there's 10 of us. Where did it? Suddenly everybody's arrived. Oh, Peter's here. Great. Welcome. And Prakash. Namaskar, Prakash. Welcome. And yeah, now we have 10 people. This is good. Okay, so we're actually about to start. But just for those of you who arrived, can you just make sure you mute if you're on if you've got microphone access, most of you do. Ishika, Ishika just, namaskar. Yeah, could you please mute your microphone, Ishika? On the bottom left, there's a button saying mute. And then if you do want to speak, you can unmute it and then mute it again afterwards, all right? So this is great. We've got, from the East Coast, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not counting Didi and Andaviba because she's in India. So there's 5 of you on the East Coast. From the West Coast, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of us. Great. And we might have one Didi join us from Venezuela. Do you know if she's joining us, Maheshwananda? You can either put in the chat or unmute yourself.
She's trying to, but not yet.
Okay, great. That'll be neat. Okay, so we're ready to start now. I think we've got most of our people. So I'm just going to share my screen. So San Francisco Bridge is going to disappear.
Dada, there's no way you can increase your microphone, is there? The volume's low on my computer.
I can sit a bit closer to the computer.
That sounds better.
Oh, okay. All right. So I'm going to share my screen. So you should all see this slide presentation here now. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. All right. So this is so this week we're going to have the introduction to this course, and I'll give you an overview in a minute, and I'll explain exactly what the objective of this is and how we're going to go about it. So I wanted to start with a few quotes from Boa about prachar. So prachar means to propagate meditation and spiritual practice, and here's a couple of things that he said about it. One is, this is part of a well-known quote, of course, it's your bounden duty to bring all to the path of bliss. One, and then as part of the same quote, verily, this is a part and parcel of sadhana, spiritual practice, to lead others along the path of righteousness. I really like this one. It's from one of his New Year messages, 1981. It's our duty to accelerate the speed of human progress. Your endless efforts to broaden and smoothen the path of human movement will render our present existence and your future history inestimable. So I often refer to this one, especially where he talks about smoothing and broadening and smoothing the path. To me, that means that it's our job to make it easier for people to start or to adopt a spiritual practice or walk on the spiritual path. And this sometimes people need to be reminded of that in another Varga, I think, because some people seem to imagine that it's somehow our job to make it difficult for people, but I don't think that's the right spirit. And in this, I also like this one. So punya means virtue. So among all the deeds of virtue, that prachar, the propagation of spirituality, has the most prominent place, because this can be performed only by those who themselves are spiritual aspirants. So there's a special value to the fact that, you know, we're practicing meditation gives us the ability to introduce it to other people at some level. And that's unique to people who are actually doing the practice. So in this first session, oh yeah, I'm going to give you an overview of the whole course. Now I'm getting an echo from someone who's left their microphone on. I'm going to give you an overview of the course. I'm going to take a look at what our goal is. We're going to talk about building community and marketing. So those are the 4 bits. Let me go through them again. Those are the 4 bits that we're going to go through today. Okay, so the overview of the course. So yeah, the goal of this is, I want to keep this very simple. Some courses in the past about how to teach a whole meditation course. Somebody's got their microphone on, and we're getting an echo. It's not one. Take a look at your little microphone button down on the left, just see if it's muted. Okay, that's fine now. So yeah, the goal of this is actually very simple. In this course, you're not going to learn how to teach a whole structured course. That's something I've taught before. That I'll probably do that again next year, but here I want to go to a more foundational level. Here the goal really is just to start a little beginners group and give people a chance to meditate together regularly, and to make that inspiring, and they learn a little bit, but the real purpose is that they can just meditate together regularly to help to build their practice. That's all we're aiming to do. There's a number of steps to that. First is building community, stage 1. We're going to be looking at that today, and we're going to be looking at marketing. The second session, which I think is on Saturday morning, California time, it's Saturday morning, we're going to be really looking at how to answer questions, because one of the things that people like about coming to a group is that they can get their own questions answered personally. It's not the same as watching a video, or, you know, if they want to learn about meditation, they can read a book or watch a video. There's thousands of them out there, but it's only when they're with real people either online or even better in a live group, that they can get their own questions answered. So we're going to spend quite a bit, a whole part of this is going to be about how to address frequently asked questions. And we've got some really nice resources that can help you to be able to do that with your group. The third section is going to be about how to lead a guided meditation, just using the Bhavanan Kevalam mantra. It'll be essentially what we would be doing in the group is singing kirtan together, either with a recording or if you're a musician or you have a musician in your group, you can have them play live, and then meditating with a guided meditation into the silent meditation, because the idea of this group is that it's open to beginners. And then the last part will be on how to build this group into a community, that's kind of level 2 of building community. Just to go back to number 1, which you're going to be going through today, building community. Yeah, in this part, we'll just be talking about building this little community within this little group, how to make it feel welcoming, how to make people help people to feel that they belong there. And the second part is on marketing, which is really about how to get people to the group in the first place. At least that's the stage 1 of that. So that's the overview of the whole course. It's going over actually more than a month. It was designed for 4 weeks, but all the online parts of it, or the webinars, they spread over a month, and I'll be giving you assignments each week, which you can fulfill during the week. And then in December, we have 2 weekends, one on the East Coast, one on the West Coast, weekend retreats. And the idea there is that from what you've learned, you can actually come and practice in person with one another. And that's when you really get it nailed down. You actually experience what it's like to lead a group meditation, what it's like to lead an introductory game for your members, or how to answer questions on the spot, and those kind of things. They'll be practicing live. So the live practice weekend is the last part. And one weekend is in the first weekend of December. Well, it's actually the 7th and 8th of December. That's on the West Coast. On the East Coast, I believe it's a week later, whatever that is, 15th and 16th, 17th, something. 15th and 16th. Okay. The other thing is each week we'll be sending you, or you'll get a mini a chapter of our workbook. And you've already received that. So one of your main assignments each week will be to read that. And there may be some exercises in there, which I encourage you to do. So that's, the last part. In building community stage 2, we'll be looking at kind of what are the next steps and what resources are out there that you can use. Okay, I can tell you a story. Any of you familiar with Dr. Seuss? You can just put in the chat if you like, if you know Dr. Seuss. He was an amazing children's writer. When I was about 7 years old, he visited New Zealand and he signed my copy of One Fish, Two Fish, Red Fish, Blue Fish. And I was incredibly thrilled, and I gave him a picture of a monster. So he has been an amazing mentor to many, many children through his books. He's passed away now. He actually lived quite close to where I am. In Santa Rosa. But he inspired a whole series of children's books by other writers. So this is one of those. And they're all part of the Cat in the Hat series. So if you look at this, you can see the Cat in the Hat. So that's, this is all inspired by Dr. Seuss, but this is by another fellow. It's called The Big Jump. Okay, so we're going to go through this story. And it's about this little boy, and his name was Ben. And that's the king of the country where he lived in. And the king had a lot of dogs. He was very fond of dogs. So he had lots of dogs and liked to play with his dogs. And one day, Ben, with his dog, met the king. And he was very excited. And the king kind of liked Ben because he saw he had a puppy. And the king likes dogs. So Ben asked the king, he said, "How can I become a king like you?" And the king said, "Well, to become a king is not easy. If you want to become a king, you have to perform the big jump." And he demonstrated. He jumped to the top of his castle in one jump. And Ben was amazed, and so was his puppy. And he thought, man, I I don't know if I can do that. But then he decided, okay, I'm going to work up to it. I'm going to start off, you know, with small jumps, and I'll use a pole and I'll go higher. But he fell down, all the boxes fell down, and his puppy was surprised. And he didn't know what to do. But then his clever little puppy got an idea. The puppy decided he would jump up the steps one at a time, rather than trying to jump right to the top in one jump. And Ben realized that the king never said he had to do it all in one jump. He just had to jump. So then he jumped to the top of the castle, one step at a time. And all his friends were amazed at how clever he was and how clever his puppy was. And he thanked his puppy, because it was really the puppy that got the idea. And the king was very impressed. He said, yep, you got what it takes. You too could become a king. All right? So, I often use this story when I'm explaining to people about how not to introduce people to an Ananda. Okay? Amazingly, this kind of worked on me, but most normal human beings, if you try and bring them straight from meeting somebody, or a friend refers them, or they bring up, oh great, come to Dharma Chakra. And it's like this big jump. And then they try and jump and they can't, and they fall down and they get discouraged and they go away. Right? That has happened, I think, to perhaps certainly tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of people who were expected to do something unreasonably difficult right at the beginning. And yeah, except in rare cases of fanatics like myself and a few others, most people don't get past this point. So we need to build some stepping stones so that there's lots of series of little jumps. And here's one way to do that. There are many ways to do this, but this is what the model that I'm using for this purpose. And that is, okay, people come in contact with Ananda Marga or Path of Bliss in one way or another. The idea of this meditation group that we're learning to run is, this is the next step. And we want to make it easy, welcoming, and we want them to then, if they get inspired, they can come to the next step. And there's a series of those, and they might, after coming to that for a while, they might go through an introductory course or come to an introductory retreat, and they might come to an intermediate retreat, they might come to Dharma Chakra and come to our path, our winter bliss or summer bliss retreat, and maybe go to LFT training or go on this tour of India that Dada Kripa Sundrananda leads every year, and then they live happily ever after. Okay? So that's a kind of big picture goal, but I want to focus on what's our immediate goal. What's actually the goal of this little meditation group that we are creating here? So I'm going to jump out of this. I want you to type in the chat what you think, just in one little sentence or one word. What's your goal? And I'll give you a clue. The goal, I'm going to say something about goal here. You might have heard of Yogi Berra. If you don't know where you're going, you'll probably get there. I like that one. So there's a thing in web design some of you might be familiar with. It's called a most wanted response, so MWR. What's your most wanted response from when people come to your little meditation group? So I want you to type that in the chat. I'm going to actually jump out of the share because I haven't figured out how to use this software properly. Uh-oh. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to do that either. I'm trying to escape from this share and I can't. It's very frustrating. Oh, there we go. Okay. I'm going to stop the share. All right. And let's see if anybody typed anything in there. Okay. Okay, very good. Peter, thank you. Again, right. Okay. Any other thoughts about what you might be want them to do? What's the most wanted response? You can't hear so well. Oh, actually, I need to sit closer to the computer. Is that better now, Peter? Okay, thanks. Okay, that they're inspired to meditate. Teach meditation at the yoga studio where I work. That's your own goal, but I'm talking about the goal, what we want the students to do as a result of us teaching them. Inspire people to do spiritual practice and do it regularly and practice morality in everyday life. Okay, you've got to breathe. That might be a great long-term goal, but there's a very simple goal, which is always the same, which a couple of you have mentioned. And that, I think it helps to have that in the front of your mind. So we're going to go back to sharing this. Okay, so we have all kind of maybe longer goals and intermediate goals, but the most practical outcome you want, if people come to your meditation group, you want them to come back next time. And then the next week, you still have the same goal. You still want them to come back. You want them to keep coming back because that's how they'll get established in their practice and do all those other things that you hope that they'll do. So keeping that in mind, what can we do to maximize the odds that they actually will come back? What makes people come back? So why don't you try typing those in the chat? And I want to see what you come up with there. So I'm going to go to the chat and see what thoughts you have, what feeling connected. Fantastic. Thanks, Prakash. Other reasons? What might people experience in your group that will inspire them to want to return? Feel good and connected. I want them to feel inspired and they continue till they become a Magi. Experience positive feeling states. Yep, very important because that's kind of what they might be expecting. Feel progress. Okay. Oh, I might have discovered something cool here. Sense of community, that it's easy, great. To pick up, they feel that, that's more of a find peace within. These may be goals, going back at the top here. Okay, this all makes sense. Feel lighter and pain-free, yeah, that's a lot of people. So one of the ways to approach this is you think, why are they coming? What's the problem that they have that they hope to solve through joining this meditation group? So what are the typical problems that people have? What are the motives, the reasons why people meditate? I mean, you mentioned, Bharava, you mentioned pain-free. Yeah, sometimes people have physical, or stress, of course, is a major one. Okay, they want help to deal with it. Loneliness, yeah. Feeling stressed, yeah, this is a big one. They want to feel some result from the meditation. They want to come away feeling less stressed, at least for a little while, yeah. Of course, what they want is for that feeling to extend. Communication in the way that they feel is feel connected and feel genuine. That's really interesting. Yeah, I think that's a great point. Okay, so these are all, I think, all super important. I'm going to go back to the screen here and explore a few ideas I had that might, include those, maybe a few more. Oh, I just discovered how to have the chat up in front of me as well as the screen, so I don't need to do this. Excellent. Isn't technology wonderful when you figure out how to use it? Great. So what makes people want to come back? So here are a few ideas I had, which include many of the things you've mentioned, maybe a couple more. So they maybe want to improve their meditation. So one thing to remember is nowadays, meditation is so popular and it's been popular for a while, that there may be people in your group who are already meditating or have been meditating for a while or have tried it before at least. So maybe they come wanting to actually improve their meditation in some way. They generally want to learn something new, but probably not too much. For example, and it needs to be relevant. So this is something to bear in mind. I remember one friend of mine, he was a Dada. he told me his first experience coming to a program by Ananda Marga was he came to a lecture in Australia, and he was the only one that turned up. So there was one Māori sister there, and he was the only person in the audience. And she sat there, dressed all in white, and just meditated for like 20 minutes. And he didn't know what was going on. So he just waited. And then she eventually opened her eyes and very slowly started talking about Brahma and Shiva, Shakti, Atmakang Brahma, and a lot of Sanskrit stuff and deep philosophy. And eventually, after about half an hour of that, she paused and asked him if he had any questions. And he said, yeah, can I learn meditation? So I think, you know, I don't know if that happens so much anymore, but maybe it still does. It's important to really put yourself in the shoes of the people who are coming and understand what they are there for, not what you think you should be injecting into their brains. So if they want to learn something new, make sure it's relevant, not too much at once, and perhaps in response to their questions is the best way to be sure that you're actually telling them what they want to know. So I like to, I always want to emphasize that. Opportunity to ask questions. So as I said earlier, this is something that they can only experience when they're in some sort of live class. So utilize that opportunity. Always give them an opportunity to ask questions. It also means they're participating, which people like to do. Experience nice kirtan. This is definitely one of the things that, one of the, what they call unique selling point about Ananda Marga is the kirtan. And a lot of people keep coming because they like kirtan in the group, because it creates great feeling, good energy. And again, they experience good energy. Someone mentioned that in the chat. This is something that, you know, we can only hope for and try and help them experience that. But if the meditation works and they feel that, that's going to keep them coming back. Of course, that's what they're coming in for in the first place. Made to feel welcome. Yeah, this was a lot of you talked about that, feeling connected. People are looking for community. A lot of people are lonely. There's an epidemic of loneliness. So if they feel that they're welcome there, if they're invited to participate in some way, they make friends and a sense of community, that actually is one of the most powerful ways apart from them actually experiencing benefits from their meditation internally, which is what we really hope for. I think this sense of community is hugely important. So one of the things I want to kind of focus on that in the next step is how to just, with a group of people who maybe hardly know each other at all or don't know each other, or maybe that some of them are completely new, some of them know each other a little bit, what's a simple way to build that sense of community every week as they come along? So that's one of the things I want to focus on a bit now. Dada Maheshwarananda knows a lot about this. He does this a lot with games, which is really cool. We don't want that. Yeah, he is really good at, why is this thing opening? Okay. He's really, really good at using games to I've lost touch with my slideshow. Here we go. Okay. He's really good at using games and participatory techniques and cooperative exercises to create a sense of community and friendship. So he's got a wonderful book on that. That's a fantastic resource. Some of you may know about. Introductions. Yeah, this is, thanks, Peter. This is the thing I'm going to talk about next, actually. Introductions are really important, and there's a simple way that we use them. Sharing responsibility. That I agree. This was from Ishika. That's something, especially once they've been coming regularly for a while, people tend to want to get involved, and that's something really, really important. So let's just look at this. This is stage one, though. We're at stage one of building community. And I'll give you an example of a very successful meditation group that I was invited to speak at, or rather to sing at mostly, and just how simple it can be. This was in San Jose. I was invited to lead a kirtan experience for this group. The guy leading it, all he would do each week was this. It was a 1-hour session, and he had minimum 50 up to 70 people coming every week. And he ran this for many years, I think 4 years or something. Eventually he got too busy, he couldn't continue it. But he got the numbers partly because it was in the meeting room, in the auditorium of a kind of New Thought church. So there was a ready audience. But he maintained the numbers because, well, I think he understood how to do some of these things, create a good feeling in the room, make people feel welcome, give them a chance to actually meditate together and develop their practice. He did it very well. So what happened is I think the meetings were at 7 in the evening. So people would arrive and there'd be one person there to welcome them if they hadn't come before, and they'd be given a little flyer which just explained the basics. And it was silent in the church. They'd come in, well, not completely silent, there'd be music playing. And he would usually use some kind of music from, one of the kirtan, some kind of nice kirtan music he would have playing, like Deva Pramal, that was one of the ones he used a lot, or some of that, easily accessible, but kind of spiritual music. So that'd be playing and people would just come in and they'd take a seat. And then they would just sit in silence and they'd meditate while the music's going on. Then about 5 minutes in, he would turn the music down and welcome everybody and just give them a 2-minute introduction to himself and what the group's about, because there's always newcomers, but there's also a lot of regulars. Then he would just ask those who were there for the first time to introduce themselves briefly. And that was really important because, for them, they're coming into maybe a strange space, and he wanted to make them feel welcome, and that really worked well. So the people that had come before, they didn't get to speak really. Maybe at the end they might get to ask questions, but there were too many of them, so he couldn't have everybody introduce themselves. In a smaller group, what I do is get everyone to introduce themselves every week. And then he would lead, so that might take 10, 15 minutes, depending on how many newcomers were there. Then they would go into a meditation, which he would lead, a guided meditation, maybe with some recorded music, maybe not. And then that would be for maybe 20 minutes. And then he would give just a 10-minute either a reading or a talk or read a story or something. And at the end, he would just tell people of any coming events. And that was it. It was just a 1-hour thing, extremely simple. It was the same every week, but he managed to put a lot of these ingredients in there, and people would hang around afterwards and chat. And they, it was kind of open then. But the 1 hour was very clearly marked so that people could go home, because a lot of people are busy and they wanted to be sure that if I go to the thing, I'm not going to be trapped there for more than an hour. They want to know that I can go home to my family or whatever. So I think he did a few things really well. One was having the greeting person there so that newcomers were made welcome just briefly. Secondly, that there's already really nice music playing and people can just sit down in silence and get a little peace, which is kind of what they're looking for right at the beginning. Then introducing everybody and asking the newcomers to introduce themselves. That was key, I think. Then, of course, the guided meditation thing, he always kept it pretty simple. And he gave a very short piece at the end where he explained something about meditation. And that was it. It's an incredibly simple formula, and it was incredibly successful. What I did with them was completely different. I got them all to sing kirtan in a big heart circle with 70 people, and it was spectacular, good fun. But it wasn't what they do every week, and it was a sort of special event that he put on for it. So what I do in Los Altos Hills here, where I live in this Jagrati here in our center, is a little bit different than that because it's a much smaller group. These days we have usually between 10 and 15. We've had up to 20. Sometimes last week we had 2, which was like super unusual. I don't know what was going on. But normally it's like 10 people. And it's usually a mix. There are some regulars and there's usually a couple of beginners. So we always want to keep it open for beginners. And one of the reasons is because the way that this group grew is mostly from people, or much of it is from people inviting friends. So you want, I mean, I always want this at least to have one group, one meditation group where people can invite their friends, because that's a major way that people get into meditation. But we do it a little bit differently than he did. But one of the main things we do at the beginning is we introduce ourselves, and everybody gets to introduce themselves. And I ask them, I have different little introductory questions. I always ask to tell their name, maybe where they're from, and then they get to answer one or maybe two questions. And I vary it, so each week it's different. I'm going to give you, there's a bunch of examples of those questions in the workbook. I'm going to give you just, I'll tell you what I did just, what's today, Monday, on Saturday. With this, just so you get an idea of what it looks like. And it's remarkably effective at building a sense of community. I know it sounds very simple, but it's really important. So we're going to go to introductions, I think, if this thing works. Okay, introductions. So these are the three questions I asked. Well, I asked them to tell us their name. So this group, just to give you an idea of the context, because I vary this quite a bit with different groups, there was a group I've been teaching at a company. About half of the class is pretty big. There's about 25 in the class. Half of them were able to come for like a half day offsite. They came at 10 in the morning. They stayed with us till 4 in the afternoon. We had lunch. First thing we did, we had 12 people in the room, and I asked them all to introduce themselves. Somebody's got a microphone on and making a bunch of noise. Yeah, not sure who that is. So I asked them three things. Firstly, yeah, their name, then what experience do they have in meditation? Now, this is really important for you as a teacher, because you want to know who in the room. Can somebody, whoever's got their mic on, can you mute it, please? We're getting interference. Yeah, you want to know who's in the room and how much experience they have in meditation. That helps you know what to talk to them about. So I always ask them, yeah, what experience they have in meditation, and there's always a mix. But these days, for example, this group of 25, when I first asked them this back at the company, more than half of them had tried meditation. About 2/3 of them had tried meditation before. So this is very, well, partly because the company itself encourage it. They have their own thing. They call it a mindful month. Every year they do it in October. A mindful minute month, sorry, a mindful minute month. And the company founder meditated and all of that. So that's not all that common, that more than half of the people have already tried meditation, but it's becoming more and more common that many of your people in the room have already tried meditation. But then I ask them why they want to meditate. And that again informs me of what I need, what problems they have and what I need to do to help them, and what sort of questions they might have. So these questions, I don't always ask these questions, but I come back to them pretty frequently. So in my weekly group, we might come back to one or both of these questions every month, for example, mixed in with other questions. And the last one is more of a fun question, but it has a very kind of a very specific purpose. And I asked them this, what is an unusual or experience or something unusual about you that other people might not know. And I give them an example, because sometimes they think, oh, I don't know anything unusual about myself, but I might give them a couple of little bit far out examples, and they're always from real life. Actually, one of these was one of the people on Saturday. He's a data scientist now, but he used to be an international tennis coach, and he not a coach. Oh, I made a mistake. He's not a coach. He was an umpire. He umpired Wimbledon. So that was kind of unusual and impressive, and different people came up with different unusual things. But so what does it actually do? It gives everyone in the room a different perspective on the other people in the room. It means they're no longer just a bunch of strangers. That's the guy who he umpired Wimbledon. That's kind of interesting. And it gets them thinking of, without maybe not consciously, but it just reminds them that everybody has an entire world of interesting things inside them that other people don't know about, and they're worth getting to know better. And this has I've found that this really works well. Another one of my favorite questions I ask them is to tell us one of their most enjoyable experiences from their childhood, or one of their favorite games from childhood. I always make sure to frame it in a very positive way. I don't ask them for a memory from their childhood because it might be an unpleasant memory. I want to make sure that I emphasize that it's something they liked very much, or something a fond memory from childhood, something like that. So again, what does it tell the group? It means everybody in the group remembers that everybody else in this room was also a child. There's this whole other dimension to their personality. And it brings the group closer. And if you do it every week, and you've got people who come every week and they're getting to see one another regularly, they really begin to feel that they know one another on a level beyond the superficial. So I find this simple introduction thing extremely important in developing the feeling of community within the group. So that's one of the main things I do. We spend quite a bit of time on it. We probably spend almost as much time on that as we do in the actual meditation, but I think it's worth it. Okay, the last thing we're going to do today, and I think we have time, we do, good, is a little bit about marketing. Now, marketing's a giant subject. There's a big piece on that in the workbook that you have. This is your main homework. It was written by David Ishtar, she's built 2 companies and knows a lot about marketing, much more than me actually, and she's actually trained in it. So if you do want to learn about that in some depth, you can do that. If you don't need to, don't worry about it. You may already have a group, for example, or you may have people at your work. I know Peter has people at work that are interested in meditation. Then it's easy. Tell them that we've got a meditation group, and you'll get people. And this is, by the way, I'm going to tell you a bit more about this. It's getting easier. But if you really want to learn about marketing, you can go through all of that and do all the exercises. If you don't want to do that, I'm going to give you a much simpler exercise, which you may choose to do instead. I'm going to, this is the simple exercise, all right? Get them to come. We want to know how you're going to get them to come, and then, of course, how you get them to keep coming. That's really our goal. So I always, think it's important to keep that in mind. Getting people to come in the first place, that's one thing, but if they don't keep coming back, then all of your marketing efforts are not really going to be so valuable. So that's why I'm emphasizing here that the group's got to feel welcoming. You've got to give them reasons to come back. And in the later part of the course, we'll go into how to do that in the longer term, what kind of collective activities you might organize for the group to really build them as a community, and things like some of the things you suggested. I know Ishika said sharing responsibility. That's definitely something that I introduced later on, but not right at the beginning. Okay, marketing can get complicated. That's why I suggest you go through, if you really want to go into this in some more depth, go through David Ishtar's exercises. It'll help you understand a lot. So I want to finish by just giving you an idea of why I was motivated to really introduce more Ananda Marga followers to how to lead a meditation group. And that's because right now, at least in the US and actually across the world, there is a very rapidly growing demand. So from a marketing perspective, that means that's the state of the market. The state of the market has shifted dramatically, especially in the last 2 years. It was already growing, but in the last couple of years, it's blown up. There's so many people wanting to know about meditation and interested in meditation now, way more than even 2 years ago, and a lot more than 10 years ago. So here's a few numbers about that. So I did a search on Google. I've been tracking this since 2004. Just a simple Google search for the word meditation, and I got 4,300,000 results. Okay, and I tried it yesterday again. Okay, guess how many results I got? And no, don't cheat. Nobody's allowed to go to Google and try it for themselves. I want you to type it in the chat. How many search results, pages do you think I got just from typing the word meditation? Okay, 10 times more. Keep guessing. And, you know, I do know this is not a reliable measure in this, you know, the whole availability of information has expanded dramatically. There's more than one factor here. 1,000 times. That's interesting, Peter. So we've got 10 times, 1,000 times. Any other guesses? No cheating. Got a pretty big range there. Only 2 of you putting a number in. Nobody else wants to have a guess? 200. Okay. Ishika, you're changing your your vote here. I don't know if that's allowed. Okay. 100. Creeper Davy, you get the prize. That's almost exactly right. It's a little bit more than that, but pretty close. It's in the region of 430 million. So firstly, what does it tell us? There's a ton of information out there about meditation. Some of it may not be terribly good information, but there's a lot of information. But it also tells you that, you know, there's a dramatically rising level of interest in meditation. Here we go. I got over 400,000 of this. It was actually, I think it was 430 something. It was really almost 100 times, or just over 100 times. Look, here's another metric. The percentage of US companies that have meditation or mindfulness programs inside the company. So back in 2014, it was 23%, which is, even then it surprised me. Now it's about 34%. So that's a huge growth in just 4 or 5 years, which was 4 years, because that was a 2018 number. Percentage of high performers means, you know, movie stars, sports athlete, you know, athletic stars, big cultural icons of various kinds. I got this number from a book by a guy called Tim Ferriss, who interviews a lot of high achievers in many fields. And he found that of all the people, hundreds of people he'd interviewed, more than 80% of them practiced meditation. So this is, that's one of the things that's driving it. Because when, you know, prominent people adopt, you know, they wear this color t-shirt or something, then all their followers want to imitate them. And the same thing happens with meditation. This is one of the things that's making it more popular. Anyone know the answer to this one? And no cheating. I always have to tell people not to cheat because it's so easy to get answers through Google now. So there's a meditation related company out there. It's as far as I know, it's the most valuable one. And yeah, see if you know what it might be. Do you know that? Well, we've got a guess of 5 billion. Anybody know what it might be, what the company might be, or another guess at what it might be worth? Because, you know, capitalism, true to form, is capitalizing on this opportunity. Alphabet. Okay, another guess. That's the mother company of Google, in case you don't know. Any others? Nobody else is guessing. Okay, I'm going to tell you. We've got 5 seconds. Last chance. 5, 4, 3, 2. Okay. It's a company called Calm. It's an app, and they were valued at about 1.2 billion last time I heard. The 5 billion, not yet. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know if I want it to happen. Alphabet. So what happened at Google, they were certainly one of the pioneers of in-house sort of meditation inside companies. One of the early employees, his name's Meng Tan, and somebody else, they co-founded a thing called Search Inside Yourself, which was a meditation training program inside the company. And that became very successful over the years. That was back in 2010. And that became really big. And then that that was sort of spun off as a separate company of its own. But it was never valued at anything like $1 billion. It's pretty big. But the apps are where the giant growth really is because of the scalability. I mean, Calm has, I don't know what their number is now, but last time I heard they had over 40 million users, which is a giant number for a meditation app. They also won the App of the Year award from Apple 2 years ago. I met both the founders of Calm. That was before they got all this money, so now they probably don't. I don't think they have the time to answer the phone if I call them. But they're both English, interestingly. And the other big meditation company, the app company, is called Headspace, and the founder of that one is also English. And of course, they're all in California, so that's the pattern. Kind of weird, whole thing. So there's this massive growth curve in terms of people being interested in meditation, information about it, people trying an app. There are hundreds of millions of people trying apps. There are actually a couple of good apps from Australia. There's one called Simple Something, and they got a big boost because I mentioned this because Peter mentioned it. Australia, I believe it's a non-profit, which is kind of refreshing. And Richard Branson did a promotion for them by having a meditation at 30,000 feet using their app in one of his Virgin Australia planes. So of course he was promoting his Virgin airline, but also this app. These people got a nice exposure. So yeah, there's something happening in Australia for sure. And there are lots and lots and lots of meditation apps, and some of them are really nicely designed. Okay, so what it means to us is it's not that difficult to find people who are interested in meditation. Which means that the marketing piece has become way easier. And it might be as simple as what Peter is hoping to do is just offer it at his workplace, or it might be a matter of just telling all your friends and getting them to tell their friends. It might be as simple as that, depending on your network, or if you have a decent sized mailing list, promoting something through that. Or you might need to do something more deliberate, and depending on what your goals are, if you're happy to get a group of 5 or 10 people meditating together regularly, it may not be that difficult. If you want to get a big group of 50, that's going to probably take work, unless it's a captive audience of some kind at a company or something, or a church or something like that. Okay, we're nearly there, I think. What's driving this growth? Okay, there's a whole thing I do on this. Why is meditation becoming so popular so quickly? Well, why this is important to understand is this is why people are coming to you. So stress is number one. There's a stress epidemic. There's also, there's a really, really neat book I recommend on this. I'm going to type it in the chat for you. If I can get my cursor has become invisible, you see. I won't type it in the chat for you. I'll type it later on so you can see it. It's called Lost Connections by Johann Hari. Hari is an H-A-R-I. It's a superb book about why there is an epidemic of stress and depression and anxiety, and very, very insightful. And he talks about meditation quite a lot towards the end. But that'll really help you understand what kind of problems people are having and how you might help them. So that's something, anyway, stress is a giant problem. It's pushing people towards meditation. Second is research. And this has made, the number of studies into meditation are now in the thousands, 12,000 is the last I heard. That's validating it in this era where science is the religion. The third is adoption by celebrities. I mentioned that before. So, you know, high achievers, people that set trends, movie stars, big famous corporate leaders like Steve Jobs, you know, he meditated. So, you know, people think, oh, okay, if I meditate, maybe I'll become Steve Jobs. If you want to do that, I don't know if I want to. And then the big one is the adoption by apps, but that, you know, accelerating this this worldwide. Okay, assignments. This is your homework. I hope you can do this before we meet again on Saturday. So read the workbook, which you will have received. And as I said, a big part of the workbook is this marketing stuff. Oh, we'll come to that. I do suggest, I know many of you have read my book, Close Your Eyes and Open Your Mind. I would, if you have read it, if you haven't, you should. If you have, you might want to read it again. I wrote it again, like 3 times. So I figure that I can have a right to ask you to read it again. I'm rewriting it for a 4th time right now. Well, not a complete rewrite. I'm making a new edition. Marketing. Okay, you could go through the material in your workbook and go through all the marketing exercises, and you'll learn a lot. But if that's a bit daunting for you, I'm going to give you an easier option, which is simply answer these 2 questions and write it down, and, you know, write a couple of pages on this. So you really have to think it through. Very simple, 2 questions. How are you going to get, you know, 10 people or, you know, a bunch of people to join your meditation group, and how are you going to get them to keep coming back? All right? That's your assignment. We've got 3 minutes. If you have any questions, last minute questions. Otherwise, we get to go home early. I know it's late for you on the East Coast. Sorry, it's almost 10 o'clock. You're always ahead of us. And while you're doing the questions, I'm going to read you, if you're typing in questions, I'm going to read you a quote. Thank you. Thank you. From, who's this? The Infinity Noma. I like that. Remember, until every person in the universe accepts the Anandamaya ideology, you will have no opportunity to rest. So I always like these big goals, you know, and that's some last words from Anandamurti to inspire you to do this. So we're going to wind up now. Thank you all very much. And you can, if you have any questions, if they're difficult questions, write to Didi Ananda Madhupurna, and if they're easy, write to me. Okay? And Didi Madhupurna has been helping a lot to make this happen, get it organized, and she's been in touch with all of you. So thanks particularly to her for her support with this. And I'll see you all next week. So I'm going to end the recording, and well, I'm going to stop the sharing if I can. Okay, in that, now you should be able to see the San Francisco Bridge again. I'm going to finish the recording. So I'll have a copy of that. Oh, yeah, how do I stop it?